The special meeting of the Indianapolis Public Library Board of Trustees is now called to order. Angie, would you please call the roll?
Yes, Mr. Biederman.
Present.
Mr. Bixby.
Present.
Dr. Machado.
Present.
Dr. Payne.
Present.
Judge Salinas.
Present.
And Ms. Trevor.
Present.
We do have a quorum.
We have a technical issue. 1 second. Sorry, we'll make it so the mic sound better.
Make sure you guys are off mute.
I think they're on mute now. Right?
Okay.
You want me to do that on all of them?
Just make sure that you guys are speaking into the actual microphone. If you can't hear yourself over the PA, then you need to lean in a little bit.
Okay. Sorry about that, guys.
Ready to go?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. And let me thank our comms department and facilities for actually fixing the sound. We found out last time at our last meeting how difficult it was to hear, so I appreciate getting that turned around in such short order. Good afternoon, everybody, and Happy New Year to board members I haven't seen this year yet. I want to begin today by thanking my fellow board members and trustees for making time for this special meeting of the board. I also want to welcome all members of the community and our library staff who've taken time out of their lives and schedules to be here today. I know that for many of you, your presence here is motivated by feelings of anger, hurt, or frustration. I also know and appreciate how deeply you care for this library. And in fact, the one thing that every person in attendance today has in common is how deeply we all care for the NDPL. The people in this room represent a wide variety of opinions on the outcome of last year's CEO search, and virtually every single one of us believes our own opinion is right and someone else's is wrong. Coming to different conclusions doesn't mean one person cares more or less than another. And I hope that disagreeing with each other without disrespecting each other can be our goal here. If, however, there are attendees who cause disruptions that prevent the board from proceeding through our agenda in a reasonably efficient manner, I will warn them to cease the disruptive behavior. And if they persist in disrupting the meeting, they will be removed from the meeting room. The next regularly scheduled meeting of this board will be held in 6 days from now, on Monday, January 23rd at 6:30. The agenda for that meeting will include time for public comment. As today's meeting is a special meeting of the NDPL Board of Trustees, public comment will not be taken. Anyone wishing to share comments or feedback with the board is invited to do so at the January 23rd meeting or through the online portal prior to the meeting. I want to thank each of you in advance for being respectful of one another as the board conducts its business today. The purpose of the special meeting is to consider a resolution to hire a qualified and neutral interim administrative caretaker for the library, drawn from outside the library's ranks. The resolution presented today would add Anita J. Harden, the principal of Interim Executives LLC, to the library's leadership team as an independent contractor as the Chief Administrative Officer for the library. Before I talk about Ms. Harden, I want to briefly outline why it would be useful to obtain the interim executive services for NDPL at this time. Some of this rationale is also included in the resolution that we will hear and consider today. Interim executives are commonly engaged to bridge transitional periods in organizations after the sudden loss of experienced executive leadership. As we are all aware, NDPL ran a national search process under the guidance of a professional search firm, but the process did not yield a permanent CEO. While 2 internal NDPL employees served in interim status over that time, NDPL has been without permanent executive leadership for 16 months now. It is during interim periods such as this one that we are currently experiencing that interim executives can provide critical thought leadership and executive direction to navigate organizational transition. An experienced executive like Ms. Harden will be of great assistance to the continued operation of NDPL services and programs without interruption, including meeting identified outcomes, the needs of the community, and expectations of constituents. An external leader like Ms. Harding will focus solely on the improvement of the organization and can bring new talents and skills from which the organization may benefit. Ms. Hardin is a seasoned executive who has provided executive leadership for several organizations and worked through difficult times. In addition, she has served as both interim president and president of Community Hospital East, as well as Community Health Network Foundation. It is my opinion that the role of Ms. Hardin will take on for a period not to exceed 1 year will be of the utmost importance to allow all stakeholders of the library, staff, board members, and patrons to refocus on the library's critical mission to our community. The resolution to come before my fellow trustees and the consulting agreement attached outlines how Ms. Hardin will be asked to assist NDPL leadership in moving through 2023. The resolution provides that the role will report to the acting CEO so that NDPL continues to be in compliance with applicable administrative code and statutory requirements. The job duties included in the agreement have been reviewed and discussed between Ms. Hardin and the acting CEO, and they will allow library leadership to adequately focus on fulfilling the important role this organization serves. The attached draft contract for executive leadership services provides information about the proposed role that Ms. Hardin would fulfill at NDPL. In addition to Ms. Hardin's efforts assisting the acting CEO and executive team with accomplishing goals within our strategic plan and implementing recommendations of the climate improvement plan, Ms. Hardin has expressed the desire to assist NDPL staff in continuing to build internal leadership capacity, including identifying training and mentorship opportunities to build NDPL leadership from within. Before we proceed, I would like to ask Acting CEO Gregory Hill to share a few remarks related to this resolution and Ms. Hardin. Mr. Hill.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Board President and board members. As I understand the role, the Chief Administrative Officer will work collaboratively with myself as acting CEO and with the rest of the library's executive leadership team as we move forward with planning, evaluating, and directing operations of the Indianapolis Public Library. I believe this collaboration will be beneficial for the executive leadership team, particularly as we review the 2022 CEO search process and begin planning for a new search in 2023. This collaboration will afford us an opportunity to integrate some best practices used by large organizations in Indianapolis and to build leadership capacity with existing library personnel. I'm also looking forward to the leadership the CEO can bring to implementation of the changes recommended in the climate study. Even positive change can be difficult to navigate and is often more easily accomplished by someone from outside an organization than from within. I remain optimistic that NDPL can and will come through this period of transition a stronger, healthier organization for the next CEO to lead. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hill. My desire as board president is that the presence of Ms. Hardin as a recognized leader in our community who will not be a candidate for the permanent CEO position will allow space to collaboratively work as a board and with all staff and leadership, inclusive of our library union and staff association, to execute a search for the next permanent CEO. Each of you was offered an opportunity to talk with Ms. Harden in advance of today's special meeting. I also know that some of you are familiar with her from previous roles within our community. That said, we do have a resolution prepared and provided to the board to bring her on in the role I've described, and I'd entertain a motion regarding that resolution, and following such a motion, a second, and I'll open the table for discussion regarding the proposed resolution. Is there a motion concerning Resolution 1, 2023?
Madam President, I move for the favorable approval of Resolution 1-2023 for the engagement of Interim Executives LLC, headed by Anita Harden, for the temporary role of Chief Administrative Officer. The motion is in the form of written resolution as follows. Resolution 1-2023, engagement of Chief Administrative Officer, January 17th, 2023. Whereas the Indianapolis Marion County Public Library has been without a permanent director and chief executive officer since September 1st, 2021. And whereas the following, the successful completion of a search process for a permanent CEO, no candidate to whom an offer of employment with the library was made accepted the offer, resulting in Gregory Hill becoming the acting CEO. And whereas the Board of Trustees will be considering plans and timeframes for restarting the search process to identify a new permanent CEO. And whereas during the pendency of the CEO search, the board desires to add leadership from outside the library system to assist and support the board, the acting CEO, library's executive committee, and staff in refocusing on the mission, statement, and vision of the library, as well as the goals necessary to accomplishing the library's strategic plan and to further implementing the results of the climate improvement study. And whereas the board believes it's in the best interest of the library to select from outside the library an experienced leader from the community who is recognized for successfully providing short-term leadership assistance and organizational stewardship to provide coordination with and support to the acting CEO on identified initiatives that will benefit library and current and future library leadership. And whereas the board supports the creation of a new temporary contractual role for the position of Chief Administrative Officer, which will be filled on an independent contractor basis. And whereas the CAO will work under the direction of the acting CEO and in conjunction with the board, supporting the mission statement and vision of the library, supporting the organizational goals provided in the library's strategic plan, implementing recommendations of the climate improvement study, building leadership capacity in the current library personnel, and other duties as recommended under the direction of the acting CEO and as may be properly delegated to the CAO. And whereas the CAO will provide assistance to the acting CEO on identified initiatives and objectives and will not displace or interfere with any duties and obligations of the acting CEO as required under the laws and regulations of the state of Indiana and or the bylaws of the library board. And whereas the library will benefit from an experienced external leader working with the acting CEO to bring new talents and skills to the organization, to assist with facilitating a smooth transition to a permanent CEO, and to assist with providing stability for the organization, its staff, and constituents. And whereas in looking to members of the Indianapolis community with experience in serving in the role of providing short-term outside leadership support for organizations, Anita J. Harden, the owner of Interim Executives LLC, was identified as an individual with significant strategic and operational leadership experience, serving a variety of organizations and initiatives, primarily nonprofit in nature, including serving in short-term leadership roles for organizations in transition. And whereas following conversations with leadership of the board and the acting CEO, Harden has expressed a willingness to serve in the capacity role of CAO. It is therefore resolved that the acting CEO is hereby authorized and empowered to complete negotiations of and enter into a consulting agreement by and between the library and Harden as the owner of Interim Executives LLC for a term not to exceed 12 months from the date hereof. It is further resolved that Harden's role as CAO pursuant to the consulting agreement shall include but not be limited to providing assistance to the acting CEO in support of the mission statement and vision of the library, supporting the overall goals in the library's strategic plan, implementing recommendations of the climate improvement study, building leadership capacity of the current library personnel. It is further resolved that Hardin's role as CAO shall not include any duties which displace or interfere with any duties and obligations of the acting CEO as legally required under the laws and regulations of the state or the bylaws of the library board. It is further resolved that the consulting agreement with Internet Executives LLC for Hardin to serve as CAO shall be in general conformance with the terms and conditions of the agreement attached hereto as Exhibit A, with such revisions and modifications as approved by the acting CEO following consultation with the library's legal counsel, and any agreement, execution, and delivery affected by the acting CEO be and hereby is confirmed and approved.
Thank you.
How much is it gonna cost?
Yeah, how much?
Actually, can I
Thank
add
you,
a question
Ms.
to council?
Go ahead.
So,
I would like to remind the
12:11.
Please let me remind you that this is
Hang on, let
a
her
board
talk.
meeting without public comment. And as I mentioned in my
There's a question.
opening remarks, we will take public comment
After
at
you make the
the
decision.
meeting next Monday.
Okay, got it.
Thank you.
You don't give a shit.
Is there a, sir, that is not acceptable behavior.
It's true. Y'all's behavior is not
Thank
acceptable.
you.
Not allowing
It's
public
true.
speech is not acceptable.
Mhm.
That's not acceptable behavior.
Is there a second on the motion?
I'll make the second.
I have a motion to amend.
Okay, the motion is moved and seconded, and we will now start with discussion. Okay.
Motion to amend. I move to amend by delaying this vote until new board members are seated.
Second.
I second that.
All right.
Okay.
So that would require, in order to pass a 2/3 vote, so we'll need 4 votes to pass the amendment.
Okay, the amendment has been moved and seconded, and
Discussion.
Okay, for discussion?
The idea that there are new board members that will be appointed by the Indianapolis Public Schools and by the City Council. So we ask the question, why the rush? Why the rush to hurry up and get someone in? And the justifications for leadership tend to be overinflated. We have on the board executive leadership that has posed a significant amount of direction and guidance. I looked up the leadership qualifications of this executive team and our acting CEO. Our acting CEO right now has exhibited significant leadership and understands the significance of bringing together the individuals responsible for facilities. We just met last week with the director for our facilities, an excellent leader, our communications leader. I met 2 weeks ago with the person responsible for HR. We have so many leadership qualifications, and I just want to speak to the leadership that already exists within our library. Greg Hill has served as the Chief Public Services Officer for over 17 months. He has served as the Area Resource Manager from 2019 to 2012. He's been a regional branch manager for Lawrence from 2015. He's also served as the community branch manager for Decatur. He's been a librarian for Central, adult public services librarian, library assistant too in Warren. These individuals who are responsible for our finances, for our facilities, for our communications, for our HR, have demonstrated enormous leadership. So I wonder why the rush, for discussion purposes, of course, for an chief administrative officer, and out of the need to do this when additional, according to the resolution, leadership is needed. Significant leadership is being exhibited by our union, by our staff, by our branch managers, many of whom have written into us as the board to express their support for the existing leadership, acting CEO, as well as for Nichelle Hayes. So for that amendment, I wonder why the rush? And I'm trying to understand it when we have excellent HR leadership and others that I have named. So help us understand why someone who is already our acting CEO needs to have another person at a dollar amount still to be determined when we've already paid for a search firm. We've already paid for consultants to handle our communications. We've already paid for so many aspects of this, and we are of the public trust. The last point I want to make in addition to this is our conflicts of interest. Library board members, according to our bylaws, in the capacity of trust imposed upon them, shall observe ethical standards with absolute truth, integrity, and honor. Library board members shall promote a high level of service while observing ethical standards. Library board members shall avoid situations in which personal interests are served or financial benefits gained at the expense of library users, colleagues, or the institution. Library board members will not use the library or their position with the library for personal advantage or the personal advantage of friends or relatives. It is incumbent upon any library member to disqualify himself or herself immediately whenever the appearance of a conflict of interest exists. Library board members shall conduct themselves in accordance with the conflicts of interest principles set forth in these bylaws and with the established code of ethics for IMCPL, Board of Trustees, and employees, as may be amended from time to time. I read these and I kept trying to understand why the rush. And to the last point, I wanted to also point out, which to me is a really important one. I have declined phone calls and text messages to ask me to attend to a particular issue. Like, oh, here's a text message. What committee do you want to serve on? Here's a phone call. I'd like for you to talk to me about this. When we as a collective body should be in these discussions, even when disagreements occur. Instead, individuals have called me or texted me or sent a message, and I thought, no, this is not the way a public trust should be handled. And so we will move forward with this kind of movement before the appointees that you have amended this resolution for are made. Individuals who are really looking at conflict of interest when it comes down to procedural justice and due process, which requires us to meet, discuss, and confirm the kinds of things that we will believe in. I will not just take phone calls from individuals saying, I want to meet with you. No, we are a board of trustees with the public trust, handling over $70 million, and we will just continue to say, dole it out to individuals. Thank you, Pat, for the amendment, and I hope that our board members, even though they've already had discussions, as I found out just a little while ago, have said they will continue to move forward on a chief administrative officer outside of the established leadership that our internal individuals like Greg Hill, like Lolita, like the individuals who are already providing leadership for this library, and will continue to do so until we appoint the CEO. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any further discussion on the amendment? Hearing none, we'll take a vote on the amendment.
And that's it's a motion.
It's a motion.
No response.
You wanna answer the question?
Why the rush was the question.
Yeah, why the rush?
It's an opportunity for us to discuss.
Another space and opportunity.
In December, we talked about bringing on, getting started with the process of a new CEO search. And as I mentioned, the organization has been without a lead executive for 16 months.
So you're adding a year to it?
It is, and it is a testament to the team that is already in place, that things have gone well. But there's a CEO for a reason. And so there's a lead executive officer for a reason. And we are looking to bring someone in to start to bridge that gap and to help and support the organization in this interim. 16 months is a long time. And we probably have at least 6 to 9 more to go based on the plan that we're planning to pursue. So time is of the essence, and we want to move forward with
What gap has been identified? What is the gap?
7 days.
Right.
Is there discussion from any other board members?
I fail to see how bringing in another person is going to bridge any gap.
No.
Particularly when we already had Michelle Hayes.
Okay.
I do not see how bringing in, what is this, the chief acting, whatever the
Chief
title is.
Administrative Officer.
Chief Administrative Officer is gonna bridge the gap that we had for a third search. I am so much not in favor of this.
May I ask a
Does not
question
make
of
any
the committee chair for finances? Sure. Pat, how much is in this resolution that would be possibly expended in this, according to this resolution?
100 and, wait a minute, let me-
Maximum, not to exceed.
not to exceed. I can't find it. It was 199,000, I think it was.
Who pays for that?
The community.
It's 190,000.
190, not to exceed that.
Not to exceed that.
And I think that's another aspect. I'm just asking this as a question. As we look at the total expenditures for the searches, for the individuals who are consulting with us, for our legal fees that we're paying to Clark Quinlan and the law firm, and how much of this work goes forward. And I keep asking myself, what about due process and the collective deliberations of this board that allow for these kinds of contracts? And Pat, if as the chair of the finance committee, were you consulted in regards to this? Because I just received it. Oh, I just received it during the holiday yesterday at 4:48.
No.
Were you consulted about this possible contract? So, as a committee, board committee representative to this body for deliberative purposes, I go back to this whole idea of the bylaws, where the powers and governing body. And under powers, it says the board shall govern and set policy for all the affairs of the Indianapolis Marion County Public Library. It may make rules for the discharge of its responsibilities, and it may manage and ensure all real and personal property belonging to the Indianapolis Marion County Public Library. The way that we have discharged this was to set up committees, and each of the board members were to be responsible on those committees. That was the procedural approach, which has not been done according to what you're saying, Pat. Is that correct?
I have not been, no.
Consulted at all?
No.
When we deal with facilities, the chair of facilities, Curtis, when we have facilities discussions, don't you send the information ahead of time?
When time is applicable, I will, if it does. There's sometimes that we get things right at board meetings.
Yes.
But that doesn't.
You had it.
If there's no more discussion.
About her amendment, yes.
If there's no more discussion, I'd like to take a vote on the motion.
The discussion about the motion or her amendment?
Amendment.
The amendment, I'm sorry, the amendment. So,
Why don't you wait till after the public can comment?
so it would be to approve or not to approve, and Angie would call the roll.
No, it's called amendment.
Yes, Mr. Peterman?
This is to approve or not approve the
Yeah.
motion to
A
postpone.
motion to postpone.
Until the other board members are appointed.
You want me to read it again?
Yes, please.
I move to amend by delaying this vote until new board members are seated.
Yep. Why not?
It's been moved to delay this vote until new board members are seated and seconded. And so we'll call the roll for approving that motion,
Amen.
that amendment, thank you, or not.
No.
Mr. Bixby?
No.
Dr. Matata?
Approved.
Dr. Payne?
Approved.
Judge Salinas?
Boo! Get out of here. You're out here anyway.
December 31st, 2022, he is ineligible to vote. Judge Salinas'
He's
term
out.
ended, he is ineligible to vote.
Right.
He is
I will
ineligible.
ask security to remove the next person who.
Votes illegally?
Okay, security.
I agree.
We didn't complete the vote. Mr. Wolf?
No. So the amendment fails on a vote of 4-2. So we will continue with discussion of the motion on the table, which is resolution 1/2020. Mr. Peterson, would you like to open conversation about the resolution? Yes, so now discussion of the initial motion.
I have no further discussion on the motion.
Okay.
I would like to make several points as to the motion. I received it yesterday evening, this resolution, at 4:48 on a national holiday. And this is inappropriate for a due process for this board to move forward on a resolution, not giving us any time for deliberation as a collective body. As a collective body, with no deliberation, and to receive phone calls or individuals to contact us individually and not speak to us as a collective group involved in this kind of work. I am concerned because we have received literally over the weekend message after message after message speaking to the board, and there's been no conversation about it. No conversation about the many comments that have been made about this resolution at all. Excuse me, the prior resolution, not this resolution, the prior resolution. Pat Payne and I have not been asked to participate when Greg Hill was appointed as an acting CEO. We were not consulted. We're not consulted at all. And now, the letters that have come through to the board as a concerned tax-paying citizen in Marion County, Center Township resident, I am concerned about your leadership after viewing a post on social media concerning your refusal to hire Michelle Hayes as a CEO. I must share my opinion as a college educated person. These messages go on and on and on, and we act as if nothing has come in for us to discuss as a collective body with due process. And we just say, let's go ahead and vote, let's move these resolutions forward. We have been called dysfunctional. We have been called these names. So Greg Hill and the executive team have stepped up, convened, and said they will be going to the different branches to meet and to talk. Is that correct, Greg? They have been talking about and planning next steps. Is that correct, Tish? These are the things that require deliberation. They don't require us just to go ahead, pass another resolution, and tell someone who is a highly qualified person to handle many issues out in the community. But the library requires library leadership. And we cannot learn. This is for discussion purposes. I so apologize. I apologize because I don't want to just fuel vitriolic responses. But what I want us to do is to be a thoughtful, deliberative body. And the whole time that I have been advised by legal counsel, I have asked again and again, let us know what these deliberations are about. This has not been the case. This has not been the case.
No, it has.
So I want to thank those who have been voicing their opposition to Nichelle Hayes, as well as the many have voted and decided that this is the direction to go to.
Yes.
The last point I want to make is about costs. Costs. Searches, consultations, and communications experts are costing the public dollars.
Yes.
Not our money, the public dollars. And yet we want to persist as if it's okay to hire another person who does not have library experience, a good person with lots of experiences. But we have the public trust to respond to. And how is it that we can act as if this does not affect the public trust dollars that we are responsible for?
Right, it does. Right, it does.
Being first is not easy. Being first is not easy. Nichelle Hayes stepped up to the plate to be the first person that's within the library system to take on the role of CEO. And it was not easy. She was straightforward. She talked about what she needed to do to be even a better CEO. She worked with the existing executive team, some of whom said all kinds of concerns and good things about her leadership. And we ignore it without further deliberation. In fact, received resolutions, turned over, and expected us to go ahead and sign. Thankfully, the legal team at least sent us something last night at yesterday evening at 4:48 for us to look at. This is not the way. This is not the way.
Is there further comment?
No.
What's the definition of democracy?
Thank you for asking that.
Yeah.
Because the democratic process here means
It's
that
not a
the minority of
democracy.
votes does not count.
It doesn't.
And that's why the amendment that was offered before, where we get additional opportunities for other and new people to come and think with us as a board, is critical.
Thank you. If there's no further discussion, Ms. Gelber, please call the roll.
Mr. Biederman,
Approved?
Mr. Bixby,
Yep.
Dr. Machado,
Disapprove heartily.
Dr. Payne,
No.
Dessalines,
Irrelevant.
Mr. Scott, is he eligible to vote?
sorry,
Mr. Scott, is he eligible to vote? Not eligible.
Under the bylaws, yes, he is eligible to vote.
Even though his term
Doesn't mean,
ended.
is it ethical? Is it ethical?
His
All the
term
bylaws.
ends
Term
when,
continues
Yeah.
until he's
when the
replaced.
next, when the
All bylaws.
replacement.
What's the bylaw? Listen to Michael.
So please.
All the bylaws.
What are the bylaws? What are the bylaws?
Approved.
What are the bylaws?
The bylaws speak to the ethics of this work. It repeats it again and again in terms of the conflicts of interest. It speaks to it. We have many things that are legal but unethical.
The motion passes
Yep.
for
There's another one. Unbelievable.
the resolution, resolution number 1, 2023 is approved. I'd like to call for a motion to adjourn the special meeting of the board.
So moved.
Second?
I would
There's
ask
been
the
a
board
motion and a
members
second.
and the board not
All
to
in
send me
favor?
messages and text messages and phone calls without a collective discussion of what we can have, so
All
we
in
can
favor?
agree and disagree.
The board keeps